guys, so welcome to today's lunchtime lesson. We're doing, it's a kind of vocabulary / exam focus. But of course, everything we're doing here is really useful outside of the context of exams as well. And I wanted to look today at common topics that come up in exams and phrasal verbs that you can use in them, right? But they're also all high frequency words and useful ones for you to do. So if you do take an exam in English, if you look at the marking criteria, in the vocabulary mark, both for your speaking exam and for your writing exam, something that the examiners are always looking for is phrasal verbs, right? This is something they consider like really good vocabulary and they want you to produce. And I know that a lot of people have let's say a complicated relationship with phrasal verbs in English, that they don't really like it, but they don't like them very much. So there are ways that we can help approach our way of learning phrasal verbs. And I think the first and most important step of that is considering them vocabulary. Okay, so very often phrasal verbs in English books are taught as grammar. And that's what I really want us to forget about here. Phrasal verbs are vocabulary. Okay, there's, grammar related to them, which I'll mention a little bit about later, but they are vocabulary. So an important thing about phrasal verbs, when we're using them, we need to use them when they are appropriate. And what I mean by that is the register. So for, in general, as a general rule, phrasal verbs are associated with neutral to more informal language and very often spoken language as well. So that means if you're doing an exam, for example, you shouldn't be using them in formal writing, like things like essays or reports or proposals, because it's not appropriate language to have there, okay? They are amazing to use in things like articles or reviews or informal emails because the register is appropriate there. And of course, use lots of them in your speaking exam because you don't need to produce formal English in a speaking exam. If you were doing, thinking outside of an exam, if you were doing like a presentation at work, then I wouldn't be scared about using phrasal verbs unless you were using, unless it was like a very big, important, very formal presentation. But when is that really going to happen? Okay, so it's not like it's a regular event. Yeah, if you were doing something, I don't know, presenting some kind of scientific paper, maybe then you'd want to forget about phrasal verbs. But yeah, if you're speaking, definitely bring them in. They're going to be really useful. And remember as well, the more phrasal verbs we learn, the more we improve our listening comprehension too, because we can understand things more. So don't get obsessed with not using phrasal verbs in your writing, because that sometimes happens with students as well, because we're like, oh, phrasal verbs are informal. I can never use them in formal writing. There are some phrasal verbs that are just so frequently used that it's just the word we use now. Yeah, so for example, something like turn on or turn off, or check in or check out. Those are just the words we use for those actions. Yeah, so you turn off a light, you don't ignite, or, there's not really a formal equivalent word for that. Okay, so yeah, don't get too stressed about that. But yeah, we're avoiding them in our formal writing. The other important thing to remember is that a phrasal verb can have a lot of different meanings, and the context that the verb's presented in will determine what that meaning is. So when you're learning a phrasal verb, think about, the meaning for that particular context. And that's where learning them by topic can be quite useful, right? If you group them by topic, it means you're clear about what that phrasal verb means in that particular context. Yeah. So I've chosen 6 very common exam topics. These are topics that will come up in your speaking exam, in your writing exam, and also in your listening exam. Okay. And the reading exam as well. And remember as well that some place where they normally test phrasal verbs is in the use of English as well, especially in keyword transformations and the open close, right? So it's also useful for that aspect of your exam, but obviously the topic won't be as relevant. So like I said before, they're also commonly used in real life. Even if you're not doing an exam, all of this is going to be useful vocabulary. And if we think about it within a topic, it'll be easier to remember them. Okay, so let's have a look. I'm going to give you 6 examples per topic. And what I'm going to get you to do is see if you can understand the definition of it in the example that I've given you, right? If you do not know the answer, please don't worry. Use the context to make an educated guess. And at the end, we're going to check all the answers. Okay. So the topics that I've chosen that come up a lot in exams are the environment and the natural world. This is super common in listening part 2 especially, but it can also come up in gap readings, for example. Work, one of the most commonly tested topics for the part 4 listening. If you're doing any Cambridge exams, it comes up constantly. And remember, the part 4 listening is an informal context too, so very useful as well. Travel can come up a lot, and it's also something that you quite often get asked about, especially in the part 1 of the speaking. Your free time comes up in the part 1 of the speaking a lot as well. Family is another common topic that gets discussed, and finally technology is another one that I've used. Okay, so we're going to look at 6 examples for each of these topics. Yeah, we're going to start with the environment and the natural world. Okay. So I've chosen, the first phrasal verb I chose was die out, right? So the coral reefs are dying out. Cut down. We need to cut down on our meat consumption if we want to save the planet. Dry up. A lot of water sources are drying up. Face up to. We need to face up to the climate crisis. Ignoring it won't make it go away. And wipe out. If global temperatures continue to rise, it's going to wipe out a huge amount of marine life. Okay. I said 6 examples, 5 examples. Sorry, I can't count today, obviously. Right, so what I'd like you to do, guys, look at those 5 examples and make a note of what you think that phrasal verb means for the context, right? So look at the example sentence I've given you and write down a definition, okay? At this point, I don't want you to use a dictionary because this is a skill we need to develop as well if you're doing exams for your reading, right? So it's a useful one. Look at the sentence, get an idea of what that verb is expressing. It can be helpful to think if it's a positive or a negative idea as well, okay? And we'll just look at that for a few minutes and then move on to the next topic. Right, so let's move on to the next one. So this topic is work. So we have knuckle down. It's time you take this assignment seriously and knuckle down. Knock off. Our boss is letting us knock off early to watch the football match. Take on. I've taken on too much responsibility. The job is too stressful now. Dive into. I enjoy a challenge at work. I dive into any new task I'm given. Follow through. He's very nice, but you can't depend on him to do the job properly. He starts enthusiastically, but he doesn't follow through. Okay, so again, have a look at those examples. Try and write a definition for each one using that context. Don't check the dictionary. Right, travel. Drop off. My mum dropped us off at the station in her car. Pick up. The hotel shuttle bus picked us up at the airport. Get away. I've been so busy at work, I really need to get away for a weekend. Live it up. So this is a phrasal verb, but we basically always say it. We don't change the object, right? Live it up. It's always the same. I had an amazing time in Ibiza. We really lived it up and hit all the clubs. Look forward to. I'm looking forward to my weekend break so much. Family. Take after. I take after my mum. She was also a teacher. Look after. I was the oldest, so had to look after my brothers and sisters when I was a teenager. Grow up. I was born in Spain, but I grew up in Greece. Bring up. We brought our son up to respect others and be kind. And finally, break or split up, the same. He had a tough time when his parents split up. Free time and likes and dislikes. Hang out. I like to hang out with my friends at the weekend. Take in, like taking a play or taking a show. My perfect Saturday would involve taking in a film or a play and having a great dinner. Get up to. What did you get up to this weekend? Be into. I'm really into science fiction. It's my favorite genre. Catch up with. It was great to catch up with my sister last week. I hadn't seen her for ages. And the last one, guys, technology. Back up. It's important to back up your work in case there's a problem with your computer. Log in. If you're already a registered user, please log in. Pop up. There's two ways we use pop up, guys. In the past, when you use the internet, a lot of adverts used to pop up, but not anymore. Here's another really common use of pop up. Some unexpected technical problems popped up, which made me late. Come up with. Social media companies need to come up with a way to make their apps less addictive. And finally, carry out. Technology can now carry out day-to-day tasks that 20 years ago could only be done by humans. Okay, last ones, and then we'll check our answers. Okay, so let's have a look at the answers. Okay, all of this will be available afterwards, guys, in classrooms. So if you want to check the notes and look at them in more detail, I'm going to put all of the notes from today. Okay, so some definitions, guys, but please remember for these contexts, right? So when you're checking a phrasal verb, use a dictionary responsibly. Don't look at the first definition. Go down to find the definition that suits the context you're working with. So the environment and the natural world, guys, dying out, to disappear or stop existing completely. Cut down on is when we eat, drink, or less, or use less of something. So consume something less. Very often it's related to our health as well, like we'll cut down on smoking. But here we're thinking about cutting down on resources. Drying up. So if a supply dries up, it comes to an end, no more is available. Face up to something is when we have to accept and deal with a very difficult fact or problem. And finally, guys, wipe out, to destroy, remove, or get rid of something completely. Okay. Okay, so work. Knuckle down, guys, to suddenly start working or studying hard. Knock off, to stop working and go somewhere else. Take on is when you agree to do some work or be responsible for something. Dive into is when you start doing something suddenly and energetically. Very often you don't stop to think about it either. And finally, follow through. So that's to do what needs to be done to complete something or make it successful. Okay, travel. If someone drops you off, they take someone or something to a place by car. Okay, that's an important feature of that verb. And then on your way to another place. If you collect something from somewhere, so is pick us up. Yeah, so if you pick us up, you're collecting somebody. Getaway is when you take a holiday from the place you normally live. Okay. Live it up means to do things that you really enjoy and you're spending a lot of money at the same time, right? And the last one for travel, guys, look forward to be excited and pleased about something in the future. Family, when you take after someone, you look or behave like an older relative. Look after is when you take care of someone. We also have the verb take care, means the same. Yeah, give them what they need, keep them safe. Grow up is to develop from being a child to being an adult. Another word would be mature. Please don't confuse that with grow. So grow just means that you increase in size physically, but grow up is the process of maturing. So there's lots of adults who are grown, but still need to grow up, for example. If you bring someone up, it's the way you raise your child, okay? It's how you look after and influence them until they are grown up. And finally, to split up, to end a marriage or relationship. Free time, likes and dislikes. Hang out is spending a lot of time in a particular place or with particular people. If you take in a show or a play, it just means you go to see it. This is more common in American English, but it's used here as well. If you get up to something, it's to do something. This is a really common question, right? Rather than saying, what did you do this weekend? What did you get up to? It's also got an idea that sometimes you're doing something a bit naughty, like what are the children up to? What are they getting up to? If you're into something, you're really interested and involved with it. And if you catch up with someone, you communicate with someone and see what's been happening in their lives. And finally, technology, guys. If you back something up, you make a copy of the information, which is on your computer. If you log in, you connect to a computer system by putting in your password. Pop-up means to appear sometimes unexpectedly. So we can use it to talk about those adverts, which are less common now. They used to pop up a lot on your screen. It's also when something happens that you didn't expect to, like a problem could pop up. Or something that you've lost in your house. Oh, my keys finally popped up. They appeared. Social media companies need to come up with. So come up with is to think of an answer or an idea to something. And technology can carry out something. It's to do something that needs to be organized and planned. Okay. So what I would suggest, guys, spend some time writing example sentences with these ones that we've just worked with these verbs. Please first focus on the meaning, because the meaning is always going to be the most important thing. It's vocabulary, After that, then you can spend some time focusing on the accuracy. So, for example, does that verb take an object? Can the object be moved into the middle? Does it always have to go afterwards? The accuracy, guys, if you're not doing an exam, to be honest, I really wouldn't stress myself out about it, because everyone's going to understand you. It's not a huge deal, okay? It can be more important in an exam, but even then, it's really only going to cost you marks in a keyword transformation where the order has to be correct. If you make a mistake with the object position in your speaking or your writing, no one's going to bring you down an entire grade for that, okay? So don't get too paranoid about it. And most importantly of all, like I said before, please remember it's vocabulary, it's not grammar. So you want to approach it that way. So that's why it's so much more important to understand the meaning of it than where the object has to go. Okay? That's the number one priority. So try and a good way to work with this is thinking about each topic that I've given you. Try just talking about it or writing about it for a minute, and see if you can incorporate any of the vocabulary we've discussed today, okay? So that you can begin to assimilate it. And that way, when you're in your exam, you have a better chance of producing it.